Welcome to Pembroke at 300. My name is Kyle Harney, and I'm honored and privileged to be your host on this remarkable journey through time. What fun we're going to have. The people we're going to meet and the things we're going to see, it's just going to be amazing. And while we're having all this fun, we're going to be learning a lot about the town we call home. Boy, things sure have changed here in the center recently, but that's the only constant in life, change. So just imagine with 300 years of change, how different things used to be around here. And that's what I need you to do when you watch the show. Imagine. Because let's face it, there's not a lot of places you can go where it looks like it did 300 years ago. There's very few places you can see where it looks like it did 200 years ago. If I were near the first church recently, even back as far as 150 years ago, I'd probably be riding a horse here like Hess. But I digress. To me, a town is a lot like a person. Each one is unique. They have their strengths and they have their faults. Some are small, others huge. Some are beautiful and charming, while others have, well, other charms to recommend them. But each one is unique. And they each have age. And with 300 years of history, there are going to be a lot of points of interest for us to explore in this series. But the main thing we're going to be looking at are the people. Because let's face it, you can't have a community without people. And Pembroke has had plenty of people. Fortunately for us, many of them have been pretty interesting. And we'll be talking to a great many of them. Not the least of which will be my guest this evening. Many of you are familiar with this person, or at least his name, though you're probably more familiar with hearing his name followed by the word street. Which is kind of ironic when you think about it, because when he arrived here, a street was just about the last thing you'd see in this area. But he'll tell you all about that and quite a bit more as soon as we come back with this word from our sponsors. We'll be right back with Pembroke at 300.
Husband, this cabin is drafty.
Well, do something about it, wife. I've got business to attend to with the Indians. These skins don't trade themselves, you know.
Do what? You take me to this forsaken colony and expect me to remain content in this horrid cabin, which is as drafty as London Bridge, not to mention this dirt floor.
Well, I don't know what you could do, wife. Wait a minute, maybe I do. I recently met a man at Marshfield who does this sort of thing.
What sort of thing?
Oh, what did he call it? It was, insulation.
Insul what?
Insulation. He claims it's the wave of the future, and tells of a time when there won't be a structure built in the colony without it.
What is it, dear husband?
Well, what he does is he takes a mixture of mud, moss, and twigs and crams it between the rafters of the building, thus eliminating drafts. He says that the worst offenders are near windows and doors.
Huzzah! What an ingenious solution! I wonder how he ever came up with this idea.
I wish I knew, wife. I wish I had thought of it. For then I would not be burdened with the Indians and the skins, and I wouldn't be besought with your complaining.
Well, who is this man, and how soon can he be here?
His name was Isaiah McCarthy. He lives right near Robert Barker's place by the herring run. We can stop by on our way back from church services in Duxbury on Sunday.
And why do we have to go all the way to Duxbury for church services?
It's always something, isn't it, wife? Are you burdened by a cottage besought with drafts? Mr. Isaiah McCarthy can help alleviate the source of your woes with his remarkable mud and moss mixture. Developed by Indians and perfected by Puritans, this is the product that will make your home more pleasant and comfortable all year long. Mr. McCarthy is readily available and conveniently located near the herring run, less than half a day's journey from Marshfield or Duxbury, receiving interested parties all days, even the Sabbath. McCarthy's mud and moss mixture, calming your drafts in your dwelling since 1698.
And we're back. In case you're just joining us, this is Pembroke at 300, and I'm your host, Kyle Harney. Tonight we have a really great treat. We're going to be interviewing somebody who's a household name in this town, but before his name was immortalized with street signs, he was quite a prominent person, a businessman, a landed gentry, and an avid sportsman with a certain penchant for canoeing. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert Barker, coming to us live from the Garrison. Welcome to the program, Mr. Barker, or may I call you Bobby?
I beg your pardon?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was inquiring as to whether or not I could call you by your first name instead of just calling you Mr. Barker throughout the interview.
I have no objection to that, my friend, but I believe you've been misinformed. My first name is Robert.
Of course it is. Everybody knows that. So, Robert, would you like to share some of your early memories of Pembroke with us?
I have none. I've never met the man.
Oh, do forgive me. Well, then, would you regale us with what this place that you called home looked like when you first arrived in these parts?
As I recall, it was autumn, and we were rowing up the North River. It's a vast, vast waterway, and I suggested that we perhaps explore one of the many tributaries that had run off to the sides of the river. We selected one to the south, and there were no complaints, and so I suggested we go down this one. Before we knew it, we'd come upon a rather rapid running brook, and we had followed that quite a ways, and then we had to land the canoe and go on foot from there forth. The vast woods were incredibly verdant, and there were wonderful meadows, and it was fantastic. I really thought that this might be the place that I might enjoy living at.
How wonderful. Could you recall what your thoughts were when you first arrived?
I'm sure that my thoughts were of a very humble nature. But I recall asking our Heavenly Father to bless me and allow me to take this land and make it a home for my family. For there were a great many variables which I enjoyed when I visited this place, not the least of which was a herring run. Now, herring runs are known throughout the colony, and they are a great asset to any property, for not only do they provide you with a swift waterway, which can be used in any number of ways, they also provide a wealth of fish every spring, and it was that really which led me to this area. I made myself a very humble dugout, and I lived here for the winter, but it was not suitable for my wife. I took that time in acquainting myself with the acreage, as well as with the local Indians in the area. They became very close to me, and it was they who taught me that the name of this place was Namasakisit.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Namasakisit. That is the local Indian word for place of much fish.
Well, that must have sounded very encouraging to you, Mr. Barker.
Quite. I knew that Providence had favored me, and this was going to be a place where I would prosper and become a man of much respected stature. It was then after that I brought my wife Lucy, and here she bore 5 children.
5 children? You were prosperous.
Indeed, our family grew, as did my crops. Our family became quite prosperous, and as did the remarkable bounty of fish which we got every spring. It was truly a blessing. I often was found saying, "These Indians sure named the place aptly." Namasakisit, place of much fish.
So, you had a productive farm, and every year you had an embarrassment of herring.
Actually, they're called alewives.
Okay, so an embarrassment of alewives. Is there anything else you'd like to mention?
No, not particularly. We were quite content. A number of other families started moving into the area, and that was quite pleasant.
That must have been nice.
Indeed, it was a genuine pleasure to have other neighbors in the area, and this also offered me a chance to engage in other business endeavors.
Such as?
Well, as you know, my family grew to a substantial size, and my house grew thusly. Now, I don't know if I mentioned to you this earlier, but our home was not far from what is known as the Massachusetts Path, so I thought I would take advantage of the location and create an inn, so that the travelers coming from Boston to Plymouth would have a place where they could take respite and relax, and the long and arduous journey, I was glad to be of help.
Wow, what a brilliant idea. Must have been like a herring run of people all the time. They say location, location, location. You are one clever cookie. Now, did anybody that visited your inn, possibly anyone we may have heard of, anyone notable?
I would be delighted. So many travelers, though, came to visit our inn, it would be impossible for me to recount them with any degree of accuracy. Now, there was one visitor who visited us constantly, and he was one whom I was very proud to call guest.
Well, who was it?
It was the Right and Honorable Judge Samuel Sewell.
Samuel Sewell? A judge? Like in a court?
Exactly, but not just any court. The court at Plymouth.
Forgive me, Robert, if I don't share your enthusiasm, but he's not someone I'm terribly familiar with. Could you tell us a little bit more about this Judge Samuel Sewell?
Judge Samuel Sewell was one of the most respected men in the colony. He was known by every single person who lived in these places.
And this remarkable gentleman made a custom of visiting your inn?
My good man, the Right and Honorable Judge Samuel Sewell would not think of making the trek from Boston to Plymouth, or thus, without taking a refuge under our roof. He even mentioned us in his diary.
Well, that is saying something. It's good to know that your inn was so popular with the judicial set. Now, during that time, can you think of any other businesses going on under your roof that you may want to mention to us?
No, let me assure you, running the inn was quite enough business for us. I can think of no other endeavors that occurred under our roof at the time.
Really? You can't think of any other businesses being conducted at the inn at that time?
No, honestly, I can think of no other endeavors that occurred here.
Robert, come on now. At this time, didn't your wife Lucy engage in some sort of a business ordeal?
She most certainly was not. She was a woman.
All the same, wasn't there some incident involving Lucy and the selling of cider to the Indians?
Oh, that. Yes, I'd forgotten all about that terrible business. Lucy was involved in selling cider to the Indians, but it was in 1681. She was fined. She never did it again. And that is the entire incident. Is there anything more I can tell you about that?
No, that is sufficient. So you were the picture of success. You had a great inn and a successful farm. Anything else going on at the time?
Well, during my lifetime, I engaged in a number of other businesses. And when my children came of age, my sons were apt to help me with those endeavors, and many of them were quite good at it.
Now, Robert, were all your businesses successes?
Of course not. Some of the businesses flourished wonderfully. Others, through lack of forethought or planning, faltered. But the main thing to recall is that of all the Barker businesses, nothing ever wavered but our service to community.
Excellent. You'll be glad to know that your commitment to community service has succeeded over the past 3 centuries.
Of course.
Now, all about this time, your house had grown to quite a large size and had become quite a gathering spot for the people of Namasakeset. Isn't that correct?
Yes, well, that was the way of things. Not only was our house large, it was also centrally located by all the estates of Namasakeset.
I see. Now, you told us earlier of your personal commitment to the community. Was there ever a time when your home was actually called into that same role?
In fact, there was. Indeed. It was a time of terrible fear. You see, those just settled in Namasakeset were becoming fearful of the Indians. This was strange for us, for they had been our friends. They had been brothers and sisters whom we had taken in as our own, but there were incidents happening as close as Bridgewater and Scituate, and so all of our activities were led by fear.
Well, tell us exactly what happened.
That, my friend, is not an easy thing to do. You see, all of our actions at that point in time were led by fear. And it led a lot of my Christian brothers and sisters to do things which they regretted, and that they have solely repented for.
Oh, regret! That does sound interesting.
It was a remarkable time. It is a time that I cannot think back upon without a heavy heart.
Oh, well, please tell us all about it, and don't leave anything out. I'm sure everyone would be very anxious to hear about what happened during those terrible, terrible days.
It was autumn of 1675, and we were all very, very, very concerned. They called it King Philip's War, and the entire colony was terrified. We were all informed by genuine fear, absolute terror. There was not a place in the colony where they weren't terrified, seriously terrified. We'd always lived alongside them so peacefully, and yet now we felt the need to take arms against our brothers and sisters. For it was their goal to burn every structure and kill every Christian.
Wow. No doubt, that does sound scary.
Indeed, absolutely terrifying and completely perplexing, for as I had said before, we lived with these people as brothers and sisters, and now we were terrified of them. We had to protect ourselves in every way we could see possible.
I understand. But tell us how this house that you built for your family became so important a part of the story of the Indian Wars.
It was decided by my neighbors that in the event of an unfortunate Indian attack, there should be some place where we would all gather, a place where we could seek refuge and be safe. My home was the largest in the area, and so it was decided thusly that it would be my home that would be this place. We had a great deal going for us. We had a large home with many bedrooms and enough room for all that sought refuge, but what we had mainly was a spring which led under the house and kept us with an unbridled set of fresh water.
Well, then it seems like yours was the obvious choice. What more could anyone ask for in a refuge?
A point that I'm glad you make mention of, friend. The home I built was a strong and sturdy house, but some of my neighbors, many of them actually, decided that it needed to be reinforced, and so there were many other elements added to the house, and it was forever then known as the Garrison.
So the name remained even after the threat was gone and the guns were removed.
That is the truth, friend. And I was proud for the rest of my days to be known as the master of the old Garrison.
Well, I can assure you, Mr. Barker, many of your descendants have added a great deal to this community. They even named a street after you.
Really? Oh my. And where is this street?
Well, it runs roughly off the old Massachusetts path down near the Herring Run. It wouldn't be surprising to me if it was a road you had traveled many times yourself, but I do have to tell you, it does look a great deal different these days.
Why is that, friend?
Well, dear Robert, Namasakeset is not the place it once was. Change is the only constant, and I'm sure that you can agree that the longer the time passes, the greater the change.
I can find no fault in that statement.
And speaking of time, ours has come to an end. I'd like to thank Robert Barker for taking time out of his schedule to speak with us. It was a pleasure meeting you, sir. In the shows to come, we're going to be sitting down with a lot of the people who have called Pembroke home over the past 3 centuries. There's going to be a lot of interesting stories we'll be covering. I think what you're going to find as we go over those interviews is that just showing up and making a contribution to your community is more than enough. And I hope you will be tuning in to watch us here at Pembroke at 300. I'm Kyle Harney. Have a nice evening.